Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host, Leanne Hughes.
Hello and welcome to today's show. My name is Leanne Hughes and I'm here to help you create unpredictable workshop experiences that predictably work. Now we're having a bit of fun this week. It is the week of Christmas. If you're listening to this week by week, everyone seems to be on holiday mode, so I'm bringing this festive episode to you. This episode was recorded in November as part of the Never Done Before Global Festival that my facilitation twin and host of the Workshops Work podcast, Myriam Hadnes, organised. I don't even know what the word is for what she did. She brought a global group of facilitators together that co-created this festival that ran for 24 hours virtually. So 24-hour facilitation festival. What an absolute champion. So what she did was Myriam put out a call to her previous guests on her show, and she challenged each of us to run a workshop that we'd never done before. So I had a few different ideas, but I ended up landing on this one. So what I decided to do was a serendipitous podcast interview. So what would it look like to organize a virtual workshop with the intention that everyone who showed up was a podcast guest on this show? I was definitely leaving it to fate. I had no idea who would make the call, if anyone would even join, if they would contribute. And of course, I've never done a group interview before on the show. And I also used tools that I'd never used before. A wheel spinning tool, which I'll pop into the show notes, which was free and fun, and you'll hear the music on this, as well as a random post-it note tool. I didn't want to use tools that I was familiar with. I wanted this to purely be never done before. So this interview, it is lightly edited, but it's not heavily edited, as I wanted you to hear what it was like to pull this thing off. I didn't want you to think that I also pulled off a perfect gig if it was highly edited. Everyone who dialed in, they all had different audio levels and different internet speeds, so you'll also hear that as part of the interview. But what I loved about re-listening to this conversation was you could kind of sense that people open up through it. At the beginning, I think, like all of us, when we're introducing ourselves in a workshop, like, oh, what are we in for? And I had a few prompt questions. So the whole sequence was I had a few prompt questions and I got people to vote on them beforehand, bringing in that autonomy of SCARF. It's like, right, you're here, but I will give you a choice on what the questions are, and we'll answer the most popular question first. And I did that as a strategy for, I talk about it all the time, reducing the friction. I want to make it easy for people to participate. So yeah, just that was my strategy. And I think it worked. I think after the first question, we were already starting to just start talking, and I didn't really need many prompt questions after that, which I found really cool. So my guests today are Anna from Sweden, Stefan from Luxembourg, Shane from Sydney, who lives in Amsterdam, Anna Maria from Germany, who dialed in from Romania, Grace from Hong Kong, Koshek from India, and Lily from France. So we talk about tips for a successful workshop, how to manage your energy, which leads to a very deep conversation around what you should put into your body, your dream mentor, and lots more. So what I love about this episode is that if you're listening to this, I hope that you can, I'm sure, I guess, that you could relate to someone on this episode. We've got just a diverse range of voices, and it was a pure joy to run this. Even though, the 5 minutes before, I was like, what have I done? Like, oh my gosh. It was kind of scary, but the people involved were just fantastic and loved it. So like I said, I hope you resonate with some of this. I hope some of this is new to you and you learn from your fellow facilitators. And I hope wherever you are in the world that you are taking a nice break, taking some time out and enjoying life however you can, in whatever circumstance that you can do that. If you'd like to continue the conversation when the show is over, join our community of over 1,100 facilitators in our free Facebook group called The Flip Chart. We've got just a ton of awesome people in there having great conversations. All right, that's it for the intro. Onto the show.
Oh, thank you so much. So it's 30 seconds, blah, 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 blah. Today I'm here to do a blah, blah, blah. In 4 hours, it will start. It will be on facilitation, create your survival kit. So what is a survival kit is you are in situations where you have someone who says blah, 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 blah. You don't know what to do. What will help you to survive in these situations? So this is the workshop will be on. I don't know yet what will be blah, blah, blah. It will be an experimental workshop, and where you can experiment your own blah, 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 or blah, blah, blahs. I will put you in. So, and always ask the question, how can you survive in this situation? Thank you. And I pass it to Anna.
Yeah, morning. Well, I work for the National Board of Health and Welfare in Sweden. So it's a public sector agency. And becoming this digital workplace, we don't have access to Mural or Miro or Zoom or these cool things. So I'm really here to learn and experiment with this and see how I can translate this into the tools that we actually have access to. I have to be creative to see what's possible to do in OneNote, for example, which is a tool that we can use to, well, do meetings with the same principles as if it was in Miro or Mural, but in other tools. So that's what I'm interested to learn, for example, during this whole never done before conference.
And Anna, who would you like to select next?
Okay, time for Shane.
Hejsan. Jag heter Shane och kommer från Sydney, Australia. My name's Shane and I come from Sydney in Australia. Anna would have understood vaguely what I said if my pronunciation was better.
Great.
I'm here really to build worlds. I've spent 10 years running workshops for business, and I think it's really interesting to solve the problem of how do we navigate virtual space. So the campus that you're experiencing today was built with my hands and probably a little bit broken at the moment, but hopefully it'll be recovering in about 2 hours.
For anyone listening to the podcast, I've got to share a screenshot of what Shane has created in the show notes for this. It's absolutely next level, unbelievable. I didn't know Muriel could do that. So Shane, well done. Shane, who would you like to nominate next?
I would like to nominate Anna Maria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Maria, but I also go by Anna. I am based in Berlin, but today I'm calling in from Romania. I work as chief of staff in a kind of 60 people company. And although facilitation is not kind of a formal part of my job description, it's, I would say, 70% of what I do. And to be honest, why I'm here is because I would love to learn how to bring facilitation more as a formal part of businesses and of job descriptions of middle managers, especially. I think it's massively underrated at the moment. And I think it's something that we need to kind of start building up more and more. That's at least my daily struggle. So I'm hoping to find new ways to improve in conquering it, let's say. Thanks so much.
Love that. I was having a conversation with someone else about that as well, about facilitation just being a critical skill for anyone. Doesn't matter what role you're in. Anna Maria, who would you like to nominate next?
I'll nominate Grace.
Thank you, Anna Maria. So I'm Grace calling in from Hong Kong. I am a trained psychologist now doing mostly people and organization development work. And I'm joining the conference because it's called Never Done Before. I was so intrigued that, there was even this ambition to try and do something that was never done before. After all these months of Zoom fatigue, I was just so eager to attend this and was just really curious and excited about all these. So really looking forward to this session and also later on Stephen's session. And awesome. I will invite Kaushik, if I pronounce correctly.
Kaushik, you're up. Kaushik, you're on mute, by the way. It's like the phrase of 2020.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. My internet is really struggling today, but I'm here now and I'm going through I just was sharing with Stefan about how facilitation for me almost is like a way of life. And when I really look at it, when I garden, I realize that what I really do is just set the right environment and conditions and just wait for nature to take its course. And that's all I can ever really do is to set the right environment and conditions. So for me, facilitation is a way of life that in any situation, no matter what kind of change I'm trying to create, I can just be a gardener. I can just create the right environment. So it's one of those times that makes me feel really alive. So when I really look at my life, I think if I really have to summarize my journey of exploring different ways of coming alive, I have come to see that I can see, I can respond, and I can bow down to things that are not in my hands. And in many ways, this is what I know. how I live and why I offer what I offer. And facilitation is one way where all of these come alive for me.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for your introduction, Koshek. Lily, great to have you here. Lily was a previous guest on the podcast, so she's well rehearsed in what we do. Lily, we're just on a website at the moment. It's called onlinequestions.org. I'll just throw in send it to you privately, the event code. You can vote on your favorite question. So what we've got, so that's the first time I've ever used this tool. I could have used a tool like Slido or Mentimeter, but I wanted to challenge myself and use something. This is a free tool. So if you'd like to do something where you get people to upvote for a question, it wasn't a bad experience. I think it was really easy for everyone to use. Okay, so the top sort of 3 questions that we'll pursue first, and this is how it's going to work. There'll be 3 questions. I'm going to spin the wheel for the first 2 or 3, see if it pulls up you at random. You'll have a bit of time to consider on it, and then you can reflect and respond to it. So the first question was, what are your tips for a successful workshop? How's everyone feeling? You're like, I want this question. All right, so what I've got here is just a spinning wheel. Again, first time I've ever used it. I've popped your names on here. If it spins and lands on your name, you'll be up to answer the question, and I'll spin this twice for the same question on. What are your tips for a successful workshop? All right, off we go.
Come on down,
Lily,
Lily.
you just joined us, and now you're up first. So maybe a quick intro, and then what are your tips for a successful workshop?
Hi, happy to join you, and thank you for letting me in. And so I'm Lily. I'm based in France, hence the tip of an accent. I've got a dog and a husband whom you might hear a bit on the background. Sorry about that. There you go.
Which one was that?
I'll let you guess. And my tips for a successful workshop, I guess my tip number 1 would be present and be open. As a facilitator, be as present as you can be. Take a break before, take as many breaks as you need in between, so that you're fully aware, that you have your antennas out and you can take any information in because you're being aware.
And Lily, that's something you talk about a lot. I've noticed on Instagram, so Lily and I are also Instagram friends. She talks a lot about getting in flow and getting in state. That's something that's very important to you. And absolutely. And I don't know about all of you, definitely found it tougher for virtual calls because you're in the same environment. Has anyone else found that?
Yeah, I really resonate with this. And one thing that I've tried to do now is take this habit of, before entering a Zoom call, going out of the computer, getting myself a cup of tea and not being on the computer and looking at my garden or something else. And it really helps focusing again.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Is it possible to ask a follow-up on that?
Yes.
Because one of the challenges that I'm having with virtual facilitations is I manage to stay present, but I feel I stay present in my present rather than the participant's presence. I find it very challenging in a virtual setting to make sure that my awareness and my presence is on the same level and wavelength maybe with the one of the participants. In a workshop room, you feel the vibe change and you feel when things move from where you are to where everybody else is, and there's that common understanding. And of course, there's a way to get that in a virtual room, but I'm always very aware and afraid that maybe now my presence is not the same as the participants, which in a normal room would not be an issue. So I would love to hear if anybody has any tips on how to do that in an online setting.
Yeah, thank you, Anna Maria. I find it great that you have an indicator of your presence, that you're feeling your own presence. And that's for me always the indication what's going on in me is the right thing. So if you feel low, take it as an indicator that there's some low in the participants, and react to make you feel better then, and that will help. Or just say it, but take this as an indicator in real life and in virtual life. What's happening to you is the right thing.
Just to echo what you're saying, Stephen, because I was trying to read the body language of participants in my workshop, and that's impossible. It's impossible. Like, yeah, you could be like looking at the camera, but you could also be on WhatsApp. I've got no idea what you're up to. One of my previous guests, Mark Bowden, he said, rather than read the room, lead the energy. Like, lead it with your energy. And I just love that. That's why I've sort of rocked up. I've got a glass of champagne here. This is dance floor time. So yeah, it's like leading with that, I think, is a good tip. And the fact that you are present is amazing as well.
I mean, just want to add on that. Actually, what Anna Maria shared, just even articulating that for me was helpful. I sometimes would even be vulnerable and tell my participants that, well, I'm actually a little confused and uncertain now because I can't feel your energy. Let me know, how are you feeling? So that invitation I found very helpful, because actually people also don't want the facilitator to be just standing there and doing a show that they cannot connect with. So in a way, I felt like just by telling them how I was feeling in that moment, they join in.
Oh, this is awesome. We don't need any prompt questions. But just to keep the format going for a couple more, because I thought I needed the wheel to get everyone engaged, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So you guys are fantastic. All right. But we do have one more person to answer that question of what makes a workshop successful. Anna, you're up. What are your tips for making a workshop successful?
I think much about the planning, how to really plan it as if it was like a theater. It's like a drama going on with the beginning and the middle and the end, and make all the technology work in relation to that. So we really have a plan beforehand, because we cannot improvise in the same manner as in a normal meeting. So the preparation with all the like digital workspaces and everything is really important. And there you also have to be, this is my favorite tip, don't do it alone. Be like one facilitator and your co-facilitator that help you with the technical stuff or other problems. It will make you focus, and the other problems will solve anyway. So, because when I try to do this on my own, when I get a little, confident in myself, then it often doesn't really work. But when I plan it and do it with other people, it works so much better. To be multiple facilitators is really my best tips.
Would anyone like to add to that? Shane's, now we've got an audio audience, Shane, so you're going to have to explain what is on your Post-it note, that beautiful illustration that you've drawn.
The overrated illustration is start with the end in mind. So always set out the beginning of your workshop with a clear eye on where you want to get to. And what I drew was somebody with a telescope and a flag on the other end. I guess what I should have drawn is a flag on the moon. And similarly, end with the start in mind. So look back about what you've achieved with your participants so that you have both perspectives. And it's often very easy to get unseated along the way, to Anna's point about you can't really predict what's going to happen and how do you juggle with that. But often if you steer back towards why you're here and that goal you're going for, then everybody kind of just falls into line or comes up with an idea of how to help you.
That philosophy of it not all being on us. And I like how you talk about the end as well and reflecting on that journey, because a lot of the time, and I know when I was a first-time facilitator, look, I still am, this is a first-time facilitator experience for me. I was really focusing a lot of my planning, Anna, as you talk about, on the beginning, and like making the beginning is wonderful. And then the end, I mean, everything is critical, but the end is really important. It's what they walk away with. I don't know if a lot of attention gets paid to that. So some great points. All right. Next question was voted by you. How do you, and it really links into what Lily and Anna Maria were talking about, how do you maintain your own energy on virtual calls? Now, considering this is a 24-hour virtual event, I'm going to find out from you, get your tips on how do you maintain your own energy on virtual calls. Let's spin the wheel. Let's see if this is sharing the sound, because the sound's pretty cool, right? Grace, over to you.
So I maintain my energy by sleeping enough the night before. That tends to be really helpful. And also I always have a standing workstation. So now I'm sitting, for example, you can see on my screen, but I can easily move to a place where now I can be standing. Actually, I'm now putting my laptop on my bookshelf.
Oh, cool.
So I can stand and talk. So sometimes actually I would be doing a little bit of exercise with just, basically swaying my hips, maybe without you noticing much on top. So I can still be facilitating very professionally on top while exercising with my lower body.
You have these really good, you have them for people who are pregnant, I guess probably women, because not many men get pregnant. And but they raise the bed so you don't have to bend down so much. And you can buy them, they're like $20, €20, and they raise the desk up to about 20 centimeters higher if you want. It's usually enough.
That's awesome. And I think there's a lot of people have actually pointed out to me on my podcast when I've recorded introductions or interviews standing up, they're like, you sounded different. And I think it has a lot to do with the way that you breathe. And Grace, I think is absolutely right. You can actually maintain that energy. Sometimes I just get stuck a little bit because my feet get sore from just standing in the same place. So it's like, just
that's why I have that standing now, and then I'm going to move to sitting again. So I just move around a bit. In fact, I would invite my participants to do the same. So I just say, okay, now let's all stand up and exercise. I got this list of 1 or 2 minutes music, where sometimes I invite everyone to dance too.
That's awesome. All right.
Stefan.
I really rely to Grace, so if I feel I need to move, I move, and I often ask participants to do the same. So please stand up now and get a little nice stretch. Yeah. Try to get to all the screen you have, or the room you have. Imagine all the room you have around you. Get to all the places in your room, up and down. Also to the right, to the left, behind you. There's some space behind you, in front of you, behind the screen. Thank you. And sometimes we play a game. We say in the workshop, if you hear one word, so we choose one specific word at the beginning of the workshop, and we say, once you hear this word, or you can say you pronounced it, and if you pronounce it, you have to stand up and run one time around.
Like, do you mean like a bingo word? So if it could be podcast. So every time we say podcast, we've got to run around our chair. That is such a great idea.
And
Koshak, welcome
in addition
back.
to Anna Maria for getting these energy levels, I have a question I ask. Please let me know what's your energy level now. You have 3 possible answers: top, middle, low. So please answer the question, what is your energy level now? Now, who is up? Who is middle? And who is down? Okay, thank you.
So easy. Koshak, it's great to have you back in the house. Welcome back.
Happy to be back. Yay.
Yeah.
My video is back.
Amazing. What I'll do, let's see how this wheel's looking. So the next question is, what or where is the best location you've either attended or facilitated a workshop? So we're looking at cool locations. We've got 3 names to go.
Kaushik.
I think that pronounced your name correctly. That's awesome. So welcome back,
Yes,
and you're on, Kaushik. Coolest place you've been to a workshop or facilitated one?
I think I always prefer doing workshops in spaces that are closer to the mountains. We actually had one in the north of India in this lovely space, Sambhavna, which is very close. On one end, you can just from the facilitation room and look at that, and there's a stream flowing nearby. And I somewhere feel like just having the elements out in the open and to be able to interact with them has certain special impact. Nature of this, the physical hall that holds us. So if it's a naturally built hall with large spacious, if it's built spaciously with lots of light and air flowing through, then it can be completely different. And finally, I just wanted to add, one thing we try and do is create a centerpiece together. So the better it happens, like if you're able to create that together with the right kind of atmosphere that we can create together, and then I've seen even if the other things don't fall into place, that alone can create a beautiful experience in terms of the space.
Thank you so much. I noticed you didn't say a Zoom room, unfortunately. A Zoom room near the mountains, overlooking the mountains. It'd be great.
We do have those filters now, so you can always move anywhere in the world you want to.
Great point. We've got one more person to ask this question, then we'll move to the next question. It's either Shane or Anna Maria.
Shane.
Stephen's getting into the music. Shane, coolest place? You've either been to a workshop or you run one. Where would that be?
Yeah. In the tower of the OECD in the Paris. That was pretty cool. In Dubai. And that's it. Not that cool.
What was cool about Dubai?
Post-it notes in Arabic, and realizing that when you're facilitating often, you're looking at the room and you're seeing how people behave. And they said, do you think that'll be a problem? And I said, well, you'll have to transpose the notes, but not really, because what you see is when people are standing in clusters and there's 4 of them and there's not much going up on the wall and they're kind of talking, you know that probably they're just discussing where they should be creating and then discussing. Or if you see one person writing and everybody else talking, you know they're not all participating. And those things are common regardless of language. I have these great walls of all this beautiful Arabic writing on Post-it notes, which I'd love to put up on my website, but I don't know what it says.
I'm sure you can find someone on upwork.com. It's like, translate this and let me know if it's G-rated.
Yeah, I think it would be. I was in Kuwait and Dubai, and Kuwait's pretty strict. I think it'd be pretty G-rated.
Yeah, above board. Awesome. Thank you so much, Shane. Anna Maria, we won't spin the wheel for you, but I will ask you the next question. And then what we'll do is after Anna Maria's question is, if you've still got the app open, I'll put the link in again if you need it, onlinequestions.org. Have a look through any of those questions there. And if you're like, Leanne, I really want to answer this one, then we're going to open it up after Anna Maria to hear what your responses are. And also, this is not a prescription. So if you want to just spitball about anything facilitation or workshop related, there's your opportunity. We've got about 15 to 20 more minutes of podcast conversation to go. So you're more than welcome to do that. So Anna Maria, this is a really hard hitting question. What is your workshop snack of choice? What do you like to eat during workshops?
I'm going to be really boring on that one because I actually prefer not to eat during workshops. I'm a massive fan of just a lot of water and maybe carrot sticks or something fresh and vegetably. But normally I don't really snack. I just drink tons of water. Sorry.
What about everyone else? Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Anna Maria. Any other votes for that, or who does something different?
Just to build on what Anna Maria was saying, I've started drinking hot water during the workshops, and it's really good for digestion. Like, after the meal, after the lunch break, I might have this tendency to bloat a bit and then to not be easily engaging with the participants. And then hot water really helps me with this. Might be a bit weird. It takes a bit of time to build the habit, but now that I do it really often, and it's really nice to do.
And I'm glad you asked that question, because we used to feed people's sugar snacks during the workshops, particularly after the break, like you say, after lunch, to try and pip them up. But what usually happened is they went through this sugar high very quickly, and then they just crashed. But we found that actually the best thing to do was to go out and cut some fruit, cut apples, put mandarins, and then they last for a long time.
I think we overlapped. Go on, Kaushik.
No, please go.
Okay, I was just wanting to build on what Shane was sharing about foods. So I also find that really helped to refresh the energy. And there was this one time where it was really interesting because I was facilitating in the client's office. And then at one point after lunch, the clients just brought in a big pile of fruits, which were not cut. And then they include like mandarin and oranges. And then I saw people started to just grab the mandarin or the orange and they just started peeling off the skin with their hands. And I was like, okay, do I just join in and be part of it? but the smell was so good. It was like really fresh. Everyone was like, So they were like eating and talking at the same time. I was like, but it seems to taste really good. And I just joined in and it was really refreshing. So I actually like that there was 2 elements, not just the healthy fruits, but also the fact that people were peeling it, which became part of the process that wakes people up. There's something tactile for them to play with. A bit like Lego Serious Play, but just without the Lego.
Koshek, did you have something to add? Thank you, Grace. I love that idea of like incorporating food and snacks into actually using it as an element in your design. Unintentional, but a great idea.
I think I'm also going to build on what was already mentioned here. But for me, in my experience, because facilitation involves a lot of being, it needs me to be, at least this is what I feel, that I need to be at the peak of my sensitivity with perceiving what's happening within me and around me. I feel the best environment that I can create for myself is an empty stomach. And in fact, I even encourage participants who, if you're doing some intense work, not to plan those sessions soon after breakfast or lunch. So making sure that there's at least a light stomach condition. And one thing I've noticed is that sometimes it gets pushed too hard, then there's too much hunger in the system, and then that again takes away the presence for people to stay present. So for that, there are certain, like fruits are an excellent thing that we can have. But I've also noticed that having drinks, for example, in India, it's pretty hot because of the climate here. So we have something called buttermilk, which is sort of, a milk derivative here. But also there's something as simple as warm water with some honey mixed in it can keep the 3 hours. It's like tender coconut water, which is fantastic.
We missed a bit of what you were saying in the middle there, but we got the warm water part, which kind of links into what Lily was saying in terms of temperature. Yeah, I remember going to China and going, why can't I get any cold water here? But yeah, cold water is not very good for your digestive system, I discovered. And
I was talking about warm water with honey because it's used traditionally to sort of slow down the digestion process, or the acidity process. So if I wake up, there are times that I wake up to do 3.5 hours of yoga and other practices. So if I have just one glass of warm water with some honey mixed in it, I usually don't feel hungry for 4 hours straight after I wake up. So it just has that impact on the human system in such a way. There are certain things that work specifically for keeping the hunger down and attention high.
That's awesome. And yeah, in 148 podcast episodes, we haven't really focused on food, but it is a massive element of our workshops, right? Like a lot of the time, and I think Shane, you mentioned it, like lolly seems very traditional, having sweets, and people expect that in workshops. It's what they look forward to. And sometimes when, like, if you were to throw out carrot sticks and celery, they're like, oh, like what type of workshop is this? So the dynamics of food is quite interesting.
If you're going to have carrots, you should offer some stick as well. They usually like the carrots more.
Okay. That's awesome. All right. As you look through the list, you can play these questions. Who is your dream mentor? What's one skill that you've improved over the last year? What 3 words would you use to describe yourself as a workshop participant? You can spitball off that, or the floor is open to you to ask questions or pick up on anything that you've learnt during this conversation. Open floor.
A question, Liana. What's your most challenging situation you have ever been in a workshop as facilitator?
That wasn't one of the questions we decided on beforehand. But the most challenging situation I had as a facilitator is why this podcast exists. I was working for a company flown to Canada to run a workshop, and I'd never run the workshop even in Australia. So I landed in Canada, sleep deprived, 30-hour flight, on the next day, all male workshop. Not that that matters, but just to set the context, very mining town. I've never worked in mining before, and I was running a leadership course. So I felt like an immediate imposter, like all this stuff is going on in my head. But anyway, the workshop was going really great. And then on the second half of the day one, we were doing an activity and it was going well. There were about 15 people, 5 people were participating. And then the 6th person just stood there he just said, I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. And I was like, crap, what do I do now? Now, we'd done a lot of work that morning on values and getting out of your comfort zone. So we had these flip charts up. And so I sort of scrambled in the meantime and he just refused to do it. Then as a result, the guy after him refused to do it because this guy had high status. People looked up to him. And so I took it back to that and I did get it back on track. But I was up all night, I had to go back the next day. I was dreading going back for day 2. And then when I flew back to Australia, I rang all my facilitation friends and I said, what would you have done? And then I thought, this is useful. Like, these conversations are great. And that's why the podcast started, was because there's so much value in just finding out what everyone does. And then the fact that you can just record it and share it with the world. So yeah, my biggest challenge, which I hated at the time, was the biggest blessing. I think that's a great question. Anyone else would like to share their story of a challenging moment?
Sometimes you get sessions where people just want to tell you their ideas and get you to record them for them. And I had a session where this guy, he knew the answer to everything. And it was to build a technical system. And he said, we can do that. That's really easy. I know how to do that. It's really easy. I got so sick of it. The next time he said it, I said to him, well, that's great. So I'm just going to pair you up with a designer and you can go out and sketch what it looks like and come back to us in about 2 hours and we'll review it together. And of course, he was rather reluctant to do so. So I sent them off for 2 hours and they came back. And of course, he just talked a lot and not produced anything. But that was the end of it.
Cool strategy. Thank you for sharing, Shane. Has anyone else had situations like that in workshops where things have gone off track, not in the way that you intended?
I'd like to share one experience of mine first time. This was when we were doing a group workshop with about 30 people with 3 or 4 facilitators and as a team. And this was essentially aimed at young people. And we did make some, and there was this, and I somewhat had the same experience that similar to what Shane was sharing, because throughout the workshop, one thing that was happening was this, you kids, you guys are trying to figure out things, you're not doing it right, and this is not how it's supposed to be done. But the most challenging part for me was when things didn't work out, the participant went around trying to influence everybody else, sort of, starting a civil riot within the group. And that became very difficult for me because there wasn't enough time to slow down with the entire community and say, okay, let's address what's happening, because we were coming to the tail end of the program and we were working towards something else. And there was no time, but at the same time, we were also having to face this and we couldn't ask that person to leave. And there was such complexity of dynamics. It ended up in a confrontation anyway, but then we ended up post-processing it for about a year after the event. And we're still in the process of it, just with the team and with some of the people who are involved. But taking the time out later to slow down with it really helped. But in that moment, it was incredibly challenging.
You're lucky you had some buddies around you, Koshek. All right, we might have one more question. And then as we finish this podcast, what I'd like to do is, as a quick reflection activity, we'll use that 3-word phrase. So the final question will be, what are 3 words that you'd like to use that sum up your experience on your first, or maybe your second, if you're Shane, group podcast interview? So what have you learned? How could you describe that experience using 3 words? So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about your 3 words, and we'll get everyone that's been involved in the podcast to respond to that. But before we wrap up into 3 words, Stephen.
Can you repeat what you said, please? It was so nice, but I didn't get it.
No problem. What I'd love you to do when we close the podcast is I'm going to ask each of you to share 3 words that you can use to describe your experience on a group podcast interview. So it could be, what did you learn from someone else? How did you feel? Were you challenged? Was it fun? Lily, over to you.
Yeah, there's one question that I really love people to answer is, who is your dream mentor? I found that was an amazing question.
It had 3 upvotes, I think. So there's 3 people that ticked that. Probably had someone in mind. Over to you, Anna.
The reason I went to this conference is actually thanks to Sarah Huang, who I met at another conference, which was called Virtual Open Space Experiments. And she was super duper facilitation expert in this virtual experiment, and I was so inspired by her. So how to use this format for open space technology and how you can do that. So that was just so inspiring. So maybe you should listen to Sarah Huang later during this conference.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. I think I'm connected with her on LinkedIn. I'd love to see what she pulls out. Anyone else for Dream Mentor?
I always take parts of people. So I take Myriam's energy and craziness to put people together, to do her thing, to put people in postcards. So she gets everything involved with her smile and positive energy. So big mentor for me.
Beautiful. That's why we're all here.
I would like some of your energy to put into the next one.
Whose energy?
Yours.
Oh, thank you. It is later in the day. Thanks, Shane. A lot of guests on my podcast talk about energy and how it's the number one thing. It really is. Thank you for that. I'm happy to share some with you. Cool Wheel of Fortunes with music also helps the energy, as well as our quick stretch. That was awesome. I think that really lifted it as well. All right, so to wrap up, what we'll do is, and Rio, thank you so much for joining us so late in the piece, and you'll be able to listen to the recording on the First Time Facilitator podcast. What we'll do is we'll just go around and same as how we did the intro. So I might kick off with someone and then you can nominate the next person to go, just to share that your 3 words on how you found the experience. So Koshak, because you were first time, we'll make you first this time.
3 words: ease, smiles, and alive.
Ooh.
Do I tag someone?
Yeah, go tag someone.
Okay, I'll tag Shane.
Always something new.
Thank you. Shane, who's up?
Anna.
Yeah, so I would say nervous, but fun and friendly.
Thank you, Anna. Who's up next? Oh, we missed that.
Anna Maria.
Anna Maria, lovely.
My 3 words would be interesting, fun, and honey, because now I can only think about this song. Thank you for that, Shane, by the way. Yeah.
That's awesome. Anna Maria, who's up next?
Stefan.
Thank you. Connection.
Thank you, connection. Lovely. You made it under the limit. Well done. Who's up next, Stephen? Grace or Lily?
It's a lovely Lily.
Stefan. I'll go for bingo, honey, and fun.
And Grace, you're going to wrap it up.
Fun, exciting, and podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for your words. Well done. You said nervous. I was nervous for the first maybe 70 episodes of my podcast. So the fact that you've just come on here, you don't know anyone, you didn't even know the questions, and you've thrown yourself into this, I think that is an amazing, never done before thing. I think we should all just give ourselves a round of applause. You have done so well. You've been amazing podcast guests, but this has been a never done before thing. So I'm just so grateful for you for showing up today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and attention and for tuning in to another episode of the First Time Facilitator podcast. Hit subscribe in your podcast player of choice so you don't miss an episode in future, and happy workshopping.